Hi everyone, it's Lorelei with another Tiled for RPG Maker MZ tutorial. This is a continuation of my first tiled guide, which goes over the very basics of the program and how it works with Visustella's tiled plugin. I super recommend watching that if you haven't already, because I'm not going to be going over the basics again in this video. Instead, I'll be showing you 15 advanced features this plugin offers so you can utilize it to its fullest. The first thing we're going to do is something that I skipped in my first video, and that is making a wall auto tile. If you look at Visustella's sample wall terrain set, you can see that it is set up fairly different than the terrain sets that we had been working with. Instead, the top are 5 different walls set up like this, and then the bottom are the tops of those walls set up like the typical terrain that we had been working with before. For example, the grassy cliff wall corresponds with the top of the grassy cliff wall, and same with the snow walls and the thorn walls, etc. And this is just a way to be efficient with the tile sets and make sure you're getting all that you can with the space provided. So for the map we're making today, we're going to grab this cliff auto tile that's in the RTP. So I'm going to go ahead and crop that so we can see just this. And I've made a video about auto tiles before, but the top of this is what I call a full auto tile, and the bottom of this is a simple auto tile. These work specifically as A4 tiles within the RPG Maker database. So it knows that the top is going to be a full auto tile, and it knows that the bottom is a very simple auto tile. The Auto Tile Converter plugin expects a full auto tile. That is the full center here, the preview, and these inner corners. But the wall auto tile doesn't have that. The wall is just this bottom part, no preview, and no inner corners. So the trick to get the auto tile converter to convert the wall into something that we can use as a terrain set in tiled is actually pretty simple. Because the converter expects these top 48 by 48 tiles, we are going to include these top 48 by 48 tiles, and I'm going to crop it like this. And this is what we're going to put into the auto tile converter. In fact, if you just want to delete this part altogether, that's fine too. So I'm going to export this into the input of our auto tile converter. And I'm going to call this RTP cliff wall. And then I also want a terrain set of the top of this wall. So I'm going to go back and crop this out. And this acts just the same as what we did in the first video. So I'm going to export this and call it RTP cliff top. Then in my auto tile converter project, I'm going to play. And then we've got our tiles. Now we have our 2 terrain sets, the top and the cliff wall. And then we're just going to put these on top of Visustella's sample wall tile set image. You'll notice that there are a lot of extra tiles that we don't need for the wall. So what I'm going to do is just highlight the part we need, which is this section. I'm going to mask that out so we don't see anything else. And we could probably use the remaining 4 terrain sets here for different walls if we wanted to. The preview tile here is a bit messed up. It doesn't terribly matter because it's not part of the terrain set. It's just the preview. But if you don't like it, we can always go ahead and copy this and put it down here so it looks a little nicer. Then let's do the same thing with the cliff top and put that right here. If you're looking at my layers, you can see that I already have these. When I was testing out the sample map for this video, I'm just doing it again for your benefit. And then I'm going to hide the bottom layer and save this as a new image. To move the wall terrain set into our project, we're going to follow the same steps from the first video. That is, we are going to save this into our project, and then we're going to replace the image here with the image that is in our project. And then there's nothing else we have to do. All of the terrain is set up for us already. We only have 1 wall here. We can always add more walls if we want to later. Before we go on to my second tip, I'm going to go ahead and start making the map that we're going to be using in this tutorial. I'm going to go to new map. Let's make it 45 by 45. And again, the tile set does not matter because we are not actually using any tile sets within RPG Maker. Now this is map 4. So when I go into tiled and go to new map, I'll set the width and height to 45 by 45 and the tile size to 48 by 48. And then I'm going to save this into our maps folder, map4.json, and save that. So this is the map that is going to appear in our map 4. I'm going to quickly set up our folder structure. Except this time we are naming our system folder System 0. And that is because we're going to be working with dimensions later in this video. Below has a property of z-index1, same is z-index3, above is z-index4. And then for system 0, I'm just going to paste all of the custom properties that are in the sample maps, which cover basically everything that you need for your system folder. I'm going to drag this first tile layer into below. I'm going to find our auto tile for the top of our cliff, and I'm just going to make ourselves a little floating island. Okay, now for tip number 2. A few of you asked how to get our map into the actual editor so that you can see it inside the engine. Now, unfortunately, there's no inherent way to get Tiled to put all of its tiles directly into the engine, but the workaround is simply to export this as a map and then add it as a Parallax background. So let's do that real quick. I'm going to go to File, Export as Image, and then browse to our Parallax folder and press Export. Then we can go to our map, edit it, go to Image under Parallax and find our map and press OK, and there it is. Now we can set the position of our player so that we know where he is in relation to everything else on this map. Okay, and we're in the game. Now there's no collision, and also the background being a pure black is kind of spooky. So we're gonna fix both of those things. It is recommended that if you're adding your maps as parallax backgrounds, you might want to go back and delete them all when you publish your game just to get the file size of your game down. If you do delete all of your parallax maps that you're using in the editor, you are going to have to go through every one of your maps and remove it as a parallax background, or else you're going to get errors. Alternatively, just make them entirely transparent. That should also help to reduce the file size. In our first video, I already talked about collision tiles, so I'm going to make a new layer under System and call it Collision. Put that there. And I'll go to our System tiles. As a bonus tip, I added text to the top of my tile system tiles so that I know that this tile system tile set is for my project, just in case I have a ton of other maps open, specifically from the sample project that also uses a tile system 48 by 48. I do not want to use those tiles. I want to use the tiles that are in my project. So adding this little text here was really helpful. So I'll go ahead and paint in our basic collision. But then you'll see a problem. Around our cliff, we can't necessarily put full collision because then the player is not going to be able to walk above the cliff or next to the cliff. So we're going to use these other collision markers that Visustella set up for us. They work exactly like they do in the engine. The arrows are passable and the dots are impassable. If you edit the tile set, you can see their custom properties here if you're interested. So I'm going to go ahead and add our custom collision to the top and left of our cliff. And it's a small cliff, so that didn't take much time at all. I'm going to go ahead and delete some collision here so that I can add some stairs that go up. So let's see how this looks in our game. Okay, collision is working here. Collision is working on top of the cliff, and we can't walk on top of the cliff from these directions. Cool. Now I think it's time to get rid of this black background. We're going to add a real parallax background to our map. If you're using the map preview as a parallax like we're doing right now, you'll need to add your parallax to tiled instead. To do that, we're going to make a new image layer. I'll call this parallax, put it all the way to the bottom, and we're going to set the custom property to z-index 0. And that is going to be underneath everything on that parallax level. And we'll find a nice parallax. How about just clouds? Then there are a few more custom properties we can add. One of them is speed x, which is not an integer, it is a float. And then we've got another one, speed y, which is also a float. And this is going to determine the speed the parallax is moving. So I'm just going to set them to 1 and 1. Now, if your screen is bigger than the size of the parallax, it's not going to cover the whole map. And unfortunately, at the time I'm recording this video, I cannot get tiling to work. I've tried their custom property scroll X and scroll Y, but no matter what number I put in there, it doesn't seem to change anything. There's repeat X and Y up here, but this doesn't actually work inside of RPG Maker. At least it's not supported by the plugin. So I'm not quite sure how to tile this in Tiled. If you know, please comment below. Otherwise, the way to get this to tile is to simply edit the image so that it tiles the exact size of our map. But I don't want to have to do that. Instead, I would like to just use the parallax directly in the engine, which will handle all the tiling for me. So I'm going to edit our map and change the parallax to clouds. And I'm happy with that. But say I want to add an event to this map. Say I want a chest. I'm going to make a quick chest, 500 gold, sure. I have no idea where to put this chest on my map because I can't see anything. I can't see my floating island. Now what I could do is go to our map and find the XY coordinate here. You can see on the bottom left, but that's a lot of work and there's actually an easier way to do this. Visustella has set up a way where you can put all of your maps anywhere you want in the editor and then reposition them at runtime as set up in Tiled. This is done through objects. So I'm going to make an object layer under System 0, and I'll call this Events, and then make sure we drag it into System 0. And we can only edit objects in the object pane here. So I'm going to find Events. And the tool we want is the rectangle tool. I'm going to zoom in a bit and we want to put our chest. How about here? Go to view and make sure that snap to grid is on. And where we want our chest, we're just going to drag and make a quick little square. Good practice to name this object, so I'll just call it chest. And we have to add a custom property. We want event ID integer. And then we're going to set the event ID that we want to place in this spot, which is event ID number 1. You can check that here. You can open it up and check it up here as well. So I'm going to save this and we're going to check that out. And there it is. So even though you can't see anything that's going on in the actual editor, you can at least put all of your events in one location and then reposition them within Tiled. Next, we'll take a look at animated tiles. First, an animated water auto tile. A1 is where the animated auto tiles are for RPG Maker. They are 3 frames each, where they cycle across these 3. But as you know from our first video, we can't exactly just put this directly in Tiled and call it a day. That's not going to work. We need to use the auto tile converter to turn these into terrain sets. If you look at Visustella's sample water auto tile terrain set, you can see how they've set this up. They've got their 3 frames of the water tile set here, and then they have some waterfalls down here. So I'm not going to do this again, but basically what you want to do is save each of these 3 as a separate file, put it through the auto tile converter, and then you're going to put it in the same format that Visustella has set up for us, so it looks something like this. Let's take a look in Tiled. This is how Visustella has set up the water auto tiles. There's technically only 2 actual waters here. We've got the grassy water and the drylands water. And then we have a terrain set for the waterfalls, again, just so that we are using the rest of this tile set efficiently, since we can't fit another water auto tile. The space is limited to 1024 by 1024. Now the terrains are set up like normal, like our ground terrains. But each of these tiles has an animation property, which you can see by the film icon on top of it. We can click the projector to see exactly what's going on. And it shows that this top corner tile has 3 frames. It's got this frame, and then this frame. And you can see a little preview there. Just like before, what we are going to do is save this into our project and replace the image with our image so that all of this is still set up for us. And I've already done that here. It's exactly the same, I just replaced the water image. I've got a whole other water auto tile that I could set up if I wanted to. I'm gonna go ahead and hide system so that we don't see the collision anymore. I'm gonna make a tile layer in our below, I'm gonna call it pond. And then I'm just gonna make a quick little pond with our new water auto tile. Great, so let's go ahead and make a waterfall terrain set like they have set up here. You can find waterfalls on outside A1 in the RTP. There's some waterfalls here and here. Now these waterfalls are not your typical auto tile. You cannot put them in the auto tile converter. These are set up as 3 frames at the top and the middle and the bottom, and the game just cycles through these 3 frames. So I'm going to copy this whole thing and I'm going to put it into our water file. I'm going to put it on the bottom corner. I'm also going to go ahead and drag Visustella's water sample into our file so that I can see what I'm doing, make sure it's lined up with what it needs to be lined up with. And you do have to do a little bit of image editing to get this to work. So we're going to zoom in. If you're familiar with auto tiles, then you know that they are set up in 24 by 24 tile size. So we're going to grab this 24 width edge and bring that over. And then you'll see that we've got room for 48 tile size. So we're going to duplicate this over. And that's really all we have to do. So now we've got the waterfall that's going to work with their terrain set. We're going to do something similar with this over here. We're just going to grab the 24, duplicate it over here, and then do the same with this edge, duplicate it over here. And then we can hide that and then go ahead and save this. If we look into tiled, you can see that it is set up here and it should work just fine. In our map, I'm going to go ahead and make another cliff so that we can put our waterfall on something. I'll put it here. And there we go. To make it look nicer, we'll go back to the cliff, find outside A5, and add these corners in. I'm also going to go ahead and make the pond just a little bit bigger, just under there. So animated tiles in RPG Maker are limited to 3 frames in the A1 tile set, or 3 or 4 frames, depending on how it's set up. Tiled kind of frees you from those limitations, and tiled lets you use any tile as an animated tile. It's actually pretty cool because you can add animations that are not events to your map. For example, normally for the waterfalls, you would add a water splash event, and you would end up having a ton of different events just for this waterfall splash effect. But in tiled, we can actually just make this its own tile that's animated and put it in, and it doesn't have to be an event, which is pretty cool. So let's do that. I'm going to go ahead and do that. We've got outside B that we're already using. I have this bottom right quadrant masked out so we can use all of this space, and don't look at the layers because they are spoilers for the rest of the video. So we are going to move our splash to our outside B tile set. I'm just going to copy this and paste it here. And the trick is we want to make sure that it is aligned exactly as how it's aligned in the event page. And I think that's right. Normally I just count the pixels. So there's 2 pixels there and 2 pixels there. So that's fine. And then add the animation in tiled. So we're going to edit the tile set for outside B. And now you'll see that we have our splash here. If you're familiar with event animations in RPG Maker, then you'll know that these are stepping animations. And it typically goes middle, left, middle, right, middle, left, middle, right. And that is the animation cycle. So we're going to do the same thing in tiled. I'm going to select this middle tile here, go to the projector, and I'm going to double click what frames I want. So middle, left, middle, right. And that's it. I do kind of want it to be 200 millisecond. It's a little slower. It looks a little bit more natural to me. And click close. And now we've got the film icon there, which shows that this is an animation. We have to do the same thing below the splash. There's a little bit of a splash below there. So for this one, I'm going to do middle left, middle right, and again, 200 milliseconds. And that's it. So let's go to our map. I'm going to add a new tile layer and call it waterfall splash. Drag it up above waterfall so we can actually see it. And then I'll find this. I can highlight both of these and then put them where I need them to go. And now we've made an animated tile instead of using an event, and I think that's awesome. If you're good at image editing, you can go ahead and make edits to this so that the edges are sort of masked into the cliff. I'm just going to keep them as they are. I don't think it's a big deal. And then before I forget, I'm going to add some collision tiles. Now I used full collision here along the edges of this cliff because our next tip is actually going to end up overwriting all of this collision anyway. So full collision here is just fine. So now it is time for the meat and potatoes, I guess, of this plugin, or what you're probably using tiled for, which is different dimensions or different levels. Basically, going under a bridge and going over a bridge. So we're going to add a bridge right here. Let's go to outside A5. This is a good bridge tile that we can use. We're first going to set up the bridge so that the player can walk under it. So in the above folder, we're going to make a new tile layer called bridge above. Drag that into above and go ahead and paint our bridge. We can make it look nicer by first hiding the system folder. Then we can go to these corners and clean this up a little bit. And we can also add a shadow underneath the bridge so it looks a little nicer. I added just a slightly transparent black tile to the bottom of my tile set here, and I'll put it there. And if we test this, we can go under the bridge just fine. But when we are up here on the cliff, well, first of all, we can't even get on the bridge because we have collision set here that we can't go across the cliff. But even if we could cross, this above bridge would still be above us. So let's fix that. What we want is a bridge that appears below the character. So under a bridge above, I'm going to duplicate this and drag it to the below folder so that now we have a bridge that will appear under our feet while we're walking across it. And I'll go ahead and rename this to bridge below. And now we need a way to hide bridge above whenever we are crossing this. To do that, we need to tell the engine what level or what dimension the player is currently on. So down here, we are on level 0, and up here, we are on level 1. If we look at our system tiles, we can actually see that there are level tiles here. And if we edit this, we can see what exactly they do. So under level 0, we have the property to level 0. Level 1 is to level 1, and so on. So when we touch one of these tiles, it's going to tell the engine what level we're currently on, or at least what we're going to. So I'm going to make a new tile layer underneath system 0 and call it levels and show it so we can actually see. I'm going to put the level 1 tile up here at the top of the stairs, and that's going to say once the player touches this level 1 tile, we are on level 1. And when we are on level 1, we get to apply completely different rules to all of our layers. You can already see in System 0, if you are using all of the custom properties from the sample project that we pasted over, that we have hide on level 1 and we have level 0. This means that the folder is on level 0 and it will hide itself when the player is on level 1. So this system file will just be gone when we are on level 1. We can apply the same logic to our above bridge, right? Because we want to hide the above bridge when we are on level 1. So I'm going to copy these and paste it to bridge above. Not only that, but we also have to change the collision when we're on level 1. So to do that, we're going to make a new folder, call this system 1 because this is the system for level 1. We're going to copy all of these custom properties over. Except this time, we're going to say we're going to hide on level 0 and we are active on level 1. So now we have to add a new collision layer for level 1. So I'll pull collision in here. I'm going to hide system 0 collision. And we don't actually have to be particularly precise here because this is just for level 1. We don't have to worry about any of these cliff edges. This is the only place that we'll be walking, so this is the only collision that we need. Let's test this and see if I did it right. Okay, so we can go under the bridge, and then when we are on top, we can go over the bridge. Hooray, it worked. But now there's the problem where if I go back down here, well, actually I can't because I set a collision on the staircase. So I have to remove that. But if we did go down here, I wouldn't be able to go underneath the bridge because we haven't reactivated level 0. So first of all, I'm going to remove that collision so we can actually walk down the stairs and put some collision here and here. Let's make a new tile layer called levels. And we'll put level 0 at the bottom of the stairs. So after we've gone down the stairs and hit this tile, we are now on level 0. When we go up, we are on level 1. And I'm going to do the same on system 0. We've got level 1 here and level 0 there. And you probably don't need both of these on both system folders, but I think it's good practice just in case. So let's test this again and see if everything is working the way it should. Okay, I can go under, I can go over, and then I can go under again. Yay! It's nice when things just work, you know? Now these levels, they don't have to be used exclusively for different dimensions. You can actually set up some cool stuff. One thing that Visustella did, let me see if I can find it, is that they added a hidden room that only shows up when you hit a level tile. In this case, I believe they are hitting a level 2. So once you touch level 2, then this hidden cover, which is just a black tile, has the custom property hide on level 2. So when you hit the level 2 tile, this hides, and then you can see this hidden room, which I think is really cool. I'm going to do something pretty similar in our map. It's stuff that we already went over, so I'm going to speed through it. Follow along if you want, and then I'll explain it once I'm done. Okay, so this is what I did. If I hide waterfall, you can see that I've added a staircase to the top of this new cliff, which is level 2. So if I show the system 1 folder, you can see that when I hit the level 2 block, it's going to activate level 2, and thus this waterfall here is going to hide. I've got hide on level 2. And then I have this slightly transparent waterfall that's technically always there. You don't need to hide or show this one because with the opaque waterfall, you don't really see it anyway. Stepping on level 2 not only hides this waterfall, but it also switches the system files to system 2, letting you walk up the staircase onto this brand new cliff that we have with this magical waterfall coming down from the heavens, I guess. While you're on level 2, you can still go down these stairs, but once you hit the level 1 block, then this waterfall will appear again, hiding the staircase. So let's see how this looks in-game. Okay, yep. So once I hit that level 2 block, the waterfall goes away. It leaves this slightly transparent looking one. And then I can go up here and it has its own collision. And the waterfall stays transparent. Well, technically it stays hidden with the transparent one always there. And then I can go down here and it will appear again. So this is kind of like a hidden room, I guess. It's more of a hidden access to the top of this cliff. Our next tip is looking at the rest of these system files, specifically these flags. We have the ladder, the bush, the counter, and damage. They work exactly like they do in RPG Maker. Regions and terrains are also here, and they work as you would expect. I'm assuming most of you already know RPG Maker, or at least I think you should understand RPG Maker before using this tiled plugin, so I'm not going to go over all of these. We'll just do something simple, and on this cliff, I'm going to get rid of our staircase and instead add a little vine right there. Whoop. Not right there, because that's technically our cliff tile, so I'll just say vine right here. I'll go to our system tiles and put the ladder flag on top of the vine. We also need these flags on System 1, so I'm going to duplicate them and put them into the System 1 folder. You can save and see if that worked. Yep. So he's treating the vines like a ladder, as he should. Cool. Now let's do something fun. We are going to add a reflection to the water whenever the players or other events walk on the edge of this cliff here. This is done similar to the chest, where we want to work with an object rectangle. So we're going to go to the below folder and make a new object layer, and we're going to call this reflection. And again, we can only edit this under the objects pane, so I'll go to reflection. We'll select our rectangle tool, and we are going to select the tiles where we want the reflection to activate. This is where we want the player or the event to be, in order for the reflection to appear. So we want them to stand here. And I will call this reflection trigger. Under the main object, this pink layer, we are going to add the custom property reflection cast integer, press OK. And this number is going to be how many tiles down or up that we want the reflection to go. So for us, we want it to go 3 tiles down. That's technically all we need to do. So let's test this and see how it looks. Yep. So when we are on the edge of our cliff, you can see our reflection. It just looks a little silly, doesn't it? So we are going to change the opacity of our reflection. This time under a reflection trigger, we'll add the custom property opacity. And this property is going to make the reflection slightly transparent and should be between 0 and 255. So I'm just going to put 100. Note that only objects can have the opacity property. Let's look at this. Yep, that looks much better. Note that anything that's in the reflection trigger will have a reflection, not just the player, but any events that you might have here as well. Our next tip is similar to reflection, but it is mirror. For this, I've already got a weird mirror pillar thing that I've set up here. I'm going to make a new layer for our mirror in below, and I'll put these tiles there. And then we want the rest of our pillar to go in above. So I will put these tiles here. And then we also need collision. I believe this is system 2. Let's add full collision here. Mirror is also an object. So I'll make a new object layer called mirror. And I'm going to add a rectangle again, but this time it's going to be where we want the player to stand in front of. So naturally, if we have a mirror here, we want the player to stand directly in front of it. So I will put the rectangle there. And I'll call it mirror. Here in the main mirror pink layer, we're going to add a custom property mirror cast. And this is a Boolean. And I will turn that to on. And then in the mirror trigger, we'll make a custom property called mirror. And this one is a string. Here we are going to put the X and Y of where we want our mirror to appear relative to the player. So for this traditional mirror, we want to do 0, -1. And save. And check this out. Okay, and there we are. We are cut off. So to fix that, what we can do is drag mirror above the mirror in above. So let's check this again. Much better. We aren't cut off by the top of the pillar anymore. Okay, I would definitely play around with these XY values here just to see how it changes the effect. Now let's look at blend modes. This plugin supports the blend modes addition, subtraction, screen, and multiply. If you're familiar with image editing, you likely know what all of these do. I'm not going to be too specific with these, but blend modes affect how the thing blends into what's behind it. And very, very simply, addition and screen make things lighter, and subtraction and multiply make things darker in their own unique ways. Feel free to explain it in the comments if you are triggered by my explanation of these blend modes. The cool part is blend modes work on objects, tiles, and image layers. So I've got these dungeon tiles that I'm going to put around the mirror to test all of these different blend modes. So first let's add a decoration tile in below, and I'm going to put this big old circle right here in front of the mirror. And the custom property for this is blend mode string. And we are going to try add. So let's see what that looks like. Okay, so it is very bright, and subtract makes it very, very dark. Of course, this all depends on what is actually behind it. So I'm going to put a new ground tile down, call it Magic Floor. And it's just an RTP edit that I quickly set up right here from the dungeon tile set. And I'm just going to make our ground a little bit more magical, a little bit more spooky. Like that is fine. And we'll see what this looks like. Oh yeah, that looks really cool. So let's try some objects next. I'll make an object layer called Magic Deco. Go to Objects. And here I've got these little crystals. I'm going to turn off snapping. And then I'm just going to put down these crystals. Now, it is very difficult to see them on top of the ground that I just put, but the blend mode is going to make them appear different. So this one can be screen, copy it. This one can be multiply. This one is add. And this one is subtract. Okay, so the darker ones are definitely more visible than these lighter ones. I do really like subtract, but multiply is good too. So I'm going to remove the add and screen ones and put some more subtract crystals here. I think that looks pretty cool. So you can also add these blend modes to image layers, so you can add lighting to your scene. I'm going to add these crystal pillars to the edges of our spooky ground here. And I have to add the tops to our above layer and add the collision to system 2 here and here. And we want these pillars to kind of glow. From what I've noticed for this image layer, it needs to be similar to parallax mapping, where the image needs to be the same size as your map. So an easy way to do that is to export this as an image again. We'll open this up, zoom in a bit so we can see. I'm going to make a new layer, get my brush tool. It is a large, soft, round brush, a light purple color, and I'm just going to put it on top of these pillars. Then I'm going to hide the bottom layer that was the map, and I'm going to export this into our Parallax folder, and I'm going to call it Map for Glow. In Tiled, I'm going to go to our Above folder, go to Image Layer, call this Glow, and I'll set the image to our glow. And because the image is the exact size of our map, it shows up right where they need to. We're going to want to add 2 custom properties. The first one is the blend mode, of course. And this time I'm going to do screen. And the second custom property is going to be lock location Boolean and set that to on. And this is going to keep the image from scrolling around with the player. We want it to stay in place. So I'm going to save that and we're going to see how that looks. Okay, I think that looks good. I think it might be a little bit too bright. So I'm going to go back into Photoshop and turn the opacity down to maybe like 50% and resave this. In Tiled, if you do not see your image automatically update whenever you save a new version, all you have to do is go to File, Reload, and it will reload all of those image files. Our next tip is a neat little trick that Visustella added to the plugin. You can add objects to the same as player folder, and with the correct priority, these objects will automatically layer above or below your player depending on their relative position. This is cool because you don't have to worry about the below and the above folders. All you have to do is put an object into the same as player folder. So we'll go to New Object Layer and call it Same Deco. And we need to put the custom property priority integer and set this to 1. You're technically supposed to be putting the appropriate priority on all of your layers, but I only do that at the end and only if I feel like I need to. Maybe that's wrong. I don't know. I haven't come across an issue yet, but it is in your best interest to put priority on all of your layers at least at some point. Anyway, under objects, let's go ahead and add some decorations. I think I'm going to use these crystals. And because snapping is off, we can put these crystals anywhere we want. So I'm just going to put them along the edges of our spooky ground here. Something like that. Okay, and save, and we'll see what this looks like. Okay, yeah, it works. So we can be behind the crystal and we can be above the crystal sort of automatically. And I think that's really cool. You do still need to put in collisions. And it might be worth using specific collisions since they are off-grid. These specific collisions kind of make it a little bit more precise for you. Go ahead and play around with it. You might be able to get some better collision depending on how you set up your object. Yep, I think that's fine. See how I can be above the crystal, but then down here I can't walk through the crystal. And then same with this crystal here. All right, the last feature of this plugin that I'm going to go over is mixing up different tile sizes in the same project. So you can have one map that is 48 by 48 and then another map in the same project that is 16 by 16 or 32 by 32. To demonstrate this and to also save on time, I did already make a map made out of 16 by 16 tiles. This is from Visustella's sample project. We've got the 16 by 16 tile system tiles and then a 16 by 16 tile set sampler that I used to make this little shop. Inside this shop, you can see that I've got my collisions and my flags set up, and I have two events, an NPC event here and a transfer event here on this mirror. This mirror takes you back to map 4, so I'm going to make it so that this mirror takes you to this tiny little shop. So I'm going to go to our same folder and make another object layer called Event. Under Objects, I'll go to Events. I'll go to the rectangle. This time I do want snapping to grid on. And I'll put the square on top of the mirror. I'll call this Transfer. And I will add a property Event ID 2 and save that. I don't have Event property 2 yet, so I will make a new event. Transfer player to map 3, probably like there is fine. And let's see if that worked. So I'm going up to our mirror and I get transferred. I'm huge in this tiny little shop. I'm going to talk to the NPC. She says, well, you're way too big. Let me fix that. And I've turned into a more size appropriate character. Now I can interact with this mirror and I am back. You may immediately notice that the waterfall is not transparent. And if I walk under it, it's still not transparent. And that is because whenever you load into a new map, you are automatically put onto system level 0. So right now, it doesn't know that I'm supposed to be on level 2. It thinks I'm supposed to be on level 0. And so I can't actually, there's collision here, right, that we can't see. So we got to fix that. We need to put level 2 kind of all around this mirror. The player is going to transfer into this spot here, but I don't believe it will automatically trigger when the player transfers in. I think they have to move on to level 2. So let's check. Yep. Okay, so we needed to move off of that initial spot for our waterfall to be transparent again and our collisions work. Just remember that you need to put these level 2s on system 0, even though this is technically for system 2, because we're up here, the game thinks we are on 0. So because we're kind of on 0, we're going to put these blocks to level 2 on that 0. And I just realized I put level 2s on the flags layer. It doesn't matter. And then finally, my 15th tip to you is don't have too many layers. I love layers. When I parallax map, everything is its own layer. I love that I can add like hundreds of layers in tiled without the whole thing slowing down like Photoshop would. But just because it isn't lagging in tiled doesn't mean it's not going to lag in your game. I recommend trying to build with as few layers as possible. Not at all like this. You can build the map just like this with all the layers that you want. And then when you're done, begin merging down. So if I right click, I can merge layer down. Sometimes you can't merge down because it might replace the tile that's below it in a way that it shouldn't, or it'll inherit a custom property that it shouldn't have. And you know what? That's okay. Then don't merge it down. But I would recommend merging what you can just for the sake of your game's performance. So this last final tip is super boring, very anticlimactic, but I really appreciate you guys lasting this long. Thank you so much. That is my 15 tips for the tiled plugin. Make sure you comment below to let me know that you made it this far. Good for you. I do have a few other tips for using tiled to make this map pretty, but I'm going to put that in its own video. This one's probably a bit too long already. So make sure that you subscribe so you can see when that other video comes out. Thank you so much for watching. I will see you in the next one. Bye!